Nicole walked into Uptown like someone who had shed an old skin, not because she needed anyone to love her again right away, but because she wanted to catch her own reflection in the mirror as a truly free person. Freedom was the thing she had traded away for too many years just to keep a long marriage from collapsing, the thing she once believed she could postpone until everything felt steadier, until the children were older, until the family's reputation was solid enough for her to leave without causing a storm. But it turned out stability was only another lock, and honor was nothing more than a metal collar fastened around the necks of women living inside Fairmont Crest. Even after the divorce, Nicole still felt watched, weighed, silently judged, as if every light at every party had been designed to expose the single crack on her face. So she elevated herself in the way people like to call change: new hair, new clothes, a new attitude, a sharper smile, a steadier gaze. Yet behind that surface lay a simmering anger, no longer aimed at Ted the way it used to be, but turned inward at herself for ever accepting a life defined by someone else. That anger was both fire and medicine. It helped her keep moving, helped her say no to restraints, but it also made her dangerously vulnerable to impulsive decisions, as if proving she still had the right to choose. And on that list of choices, Kial returned like an old memory pulled from a drawer, fragrant with danger, the kind of thing you want to touch just to confirm you can still feel. Kial arrived with the posture of a man who always knows how to make others believe he is both accidental and self-possessed. He didn't need many words to pull someone into his orbit, because he understood how to stand still in exactly the right place, look at exactly the right moment, and let silence do the rest. Nicole had met men like that before, men who made a woman feel as though she was controlling the game, when in truth she was only stepping onto a stage already built for her. Lately, Nicole had been genuinely happy with Carlton, and that connection scared her in a way she hadn't expected. She could still love deeply, still lean on someone, still allow her heart to soften. And that was precisely what made her panic. She had just walked out of a marriage that felt like a windowless room. She didn't want to build another room, even if this one might be prettier, warmer, and the man inside might be kinder. Nicole didn't want love to become an excuse for someone to own her again, because ownership wrapped in gentleness was still ownership, and ownership dressed as care was still a cage. So she kept Carlton at a distance that was just enough to be happy without commitment, just enough to be comforted without confession. But just enough often tricks people into believing they can control everything, and that illusion is exactly the gap psychological predators slip through. Uptown that night wore a perfectly polished kind of glamour, the sort of glamour that convinces you everything is only entertainment, only wine, only music, only harmless touches. Nicole and Kial laughed, flirted, drank, letting ambiguity lubricate the boundaries Nicole always built for herself. She reminded herself this wasn't love, it was only a stroll taken by a woman newly freed from shackles, and if she chose to kiss him it would be because she wanted to, not because she needed to. Yet at the very moment Nicole believed she was deciding, something strange tugged her backward. Kial wasn't the kind of man swept away by a moment. He was the kind of man waiting for the moment to arrive on schedule. Instinctively, that irritated Nicole, because it pulled up an old picture she hated, years of her trying to keep Ted from leaving, while Ted stood in calculated silence, always knowing in advance exactly how each explosion would unfold before choosing to remain still. Nicole hated that stillness, hated it so much she didn't even realize she was standing in front of another version of it, different only in face and wardrobe. When they leaned closer to a kiss, the air stopped being mere flirtation. Nicole felt her heart race not purely with desire, but with something more aggressive, a need to prove to the world that she could. She could step out, she could choose someone else. She could live without asking anyone's permission, not her daughter's, not Fairmont Crest's, not the invisible eyes that followed her every move. And right then, the space seemed sliced apart by an arrival that was too precisely timed to be called coincidence. A woman walked in, not frantic, not panicked, not charging forward to grab hair and scream the way people like to imagine jealousy. She was cold, her eyes not blazing with emotion but blazing with information. That calm was more dangerous than any jealous rage because it didn't come from losing control. It came from a plan. Nicole understood it instantly, and her anger swung like a knife turning in the hand. If this was a confrontation, it wasn't a confrontation for love. It was a confrontation for reputation, for status, for power inside relationships that Fairmont Crest always turns into weapons. The woman didn't need to raise her voice. She only needed a warning delivered through her gaze, through the way she said a name at exactly the right point, through the way she referenced things that made Nicole's spine go cold. Nicole felt herself boil, not because she was being insulted in public, but because she felt herself being dragged back into an old role, the wife on trial, the woman accused, the person expected to explain. Nicole hated explaining. She hated being turned into a story other people could retell in Fairmont Crest living rooms, and she hated most of all the idea of caught hearing that story from strangers with details inflated, twisted, pinned into place like proof that her mother was still weak, still incapable of living properly. Nicole had divorced to escape one man's control, yet she had never escaped the control of the perfect mother image this community forced onto her. And now, in Uptown, that image was being threatened with collapse in seconds. What made Nicole shiver even more was Kial's reaction. He didn't flinch, didn't look confused, didn't step between them like an innocent man dragged into a war. Kial almost simply observed. That attitude stole Nicole's breath with a terrifying thought. Either he was passive to the point of cruelty, or he knew exactly how everything was going to happen. In his eyes, Nicole saw calm that was hard to name, as if he feared no embarrassment, no loss of affection, no loss of anything in this room. People who fear losing nothing are often playing an entirely different game. Nicole's anger surged, no longer delicate now, more like venom moving up her spine, pushing her toward the question she didn't want to believe. If this was a trap, who was the real target? Nicole's reputation in front of Fairmont Crest. Her position inside the power network she once thought she stood outside of. Or something deeper and dirtier, the mother-daughter bond between her and Cott, the one thing Nicole still wanted to keep as her last safe zone. Then, like a perfectly executed strike, Cott appeared at that exact moment. No one said Cott had been called. No one admitted they had texted her, guided her, manufactured the encounter. But Fairmont Crest is a place where every coincidence has a hand behind it, and Nicole understood that better than anyone. Cott stood at the edge of the scene, her gaze not the harmless curiosity of a bystander but the look of someone being pulled directly into a truth she isn't ready to face. Nicole felt her heart clamp tight, not because she feared judgment from the woman, but because she feared judgment from her daughter. Her anger flared into something desperate, anger at herself for allowing an impulsive moment to become a possible lifelong wound, anger at Kial for his suspicious silence, anger at the woman for her surgical coldness, and even anger at Cott, because Cott's presence turned Nicole into someone caught red-handed like a sinner. Nicole hated that feeling. She had lived too long with the reflex to apologize for being human, for having desire, need, mistakes. Cott looked at Nicole the way you look at a painting someone has yanked out of its frame. In that look there was disappointment, confusion, and something that tasted like betrayal. But betrayal is a hazy concept between mother and daughter. Nicole couldn't tell whether Cott was disappointed by what her mother was doing, or whether Cott was simply seeing Nicole for the first time as she really was, not the composed, respectable, endlessly steady mother, but a woman unsteady on her feet, learning how to live for herself. Nicole wanted to step forward, to pull Cott into an embrace, to explain, and at the same time she wanted to scream that she owed no one an explanation, not even her own child. That contradiction tore Nicole in two, freezing her in a stance that was both defensive and pleading. And in that frozen pause, the woman gained even more advantage, because she didn't need to fight. She only needed to let Nicole watch herself shrink. The woman never erupted, never made a scene, only issued a warning with icy control. Nicole understood at once that this woman knew too much, more than a normal wife following a gut feeling could possibly know. She knew Nicole's rhythm, knew where she liked to go, knew what image she was trying to build after the divorce, even knew that Kat was the weak spot. That opened a frightening possibility. She hadn't come for emotion. She'd come for an objective. And that objective might not be Kial at all, it might be Nicole. The moment Nicole realized it, her anger turned into humiliation, humiliation at being controlled, humiliation at being used as a tool in a game she had never agreed to play. Nicole had thought she was free, but her freedom might be nothing but another corridor in a labyrinth, where they let her run only to corner her in the darkest place. Kial stayed silent, and that silence became an invisible confession. Nicole studied him harder, searching for a flicker of confusion, a protective reflex, a trace of regret. The more she looked, the more he resembled a man waiting for results rather than living a moment. If he knew Kat would witness this, why didn't he avoid it? Why didn't he stop it? Why did he let Nicole walk into that kiss like she was stepping onto an execution platform? Nicole felt the late arriving truth like a bruise blooming. Kial hadn't returned because of desire or nostalgia. He had returned at the exact point Nicole was elevating her image, becoming a focal point in the community's eyes, turning into a symbol of a woman daring to leave her marriage and live differently. If that symbol collapsed, the echo would be loud. And loud echoes always have value to manipulators. Kat was stuck with a choice that never should have belonged to her: save her mother by stepping forward, shielding her, insisting that nothing was as simple as it looked. Or walk away to protect herself, refusing to be dragged into adult mud, refusing to inherit responsibility for grown-up decisions. Nicole saw Kat hesitate, and that hesitation cut like a blade. Nicole wanted Kat to trust her, yet she feared Kat would trust what she had just seen more than any complicated truth Nicole couldn't speak in seconds. Nicole understood that from this moment on, their mother-daughter relationship could be rewritten by a photo, a story, a rumor. Fairmont Crest doesn't need truth. It needs the version with the most viral power. And if someone had deliberately led Kat here, then the goal wasn't only to embarrass Nicole. The goal was to plant a thorn in Kat's heart, so Nicole would lose her last refuge. Inside Nicole's head, decisions collided like shards of glass. Confront or retreat, erupt or stay quiet, hold on to Kial as proof she feared no one, or shove him away as self-preservation. But the more she was pushed into a corner, the more she recognized herself reacting like the woman she used to be, the woman Ted had muted with talk of family, children, honor. Nicole refused to repeat that. Her anger hardened into a bitter oath. She would not let anyone rewrite her life again. Not a new man, not a cold woman with a scalpel gaze, and certainly not at the cost of turning Kat into a weapon. Yet that oath carried a fear if Nicole struck back the wrong way, she would be the one to collapse the image she had been trying to rebuild. And Kat would be forced to watch her mother become a stranger. That moment stretched like a verdict without a gavel. Nicole felt humiliated at being exposed, hurt at being misunderstood, furious at being trapped, and terrified because Kat was watching. But her greatest panic wasn't what outsiders would think, it was what Kat would think. If Kat's disappointment was about her mother's behavior, Nicole could bear it, because behavior can be explained and repaired. But if Kat's disappointment was about Nicole as a person, Nicole as a woman who desires, who strays, who fights back, then the crack ran deeper, because it touched the core question. Would Kat accept her mother as a whole human being, or only accept an image? Nicole realized she had spent too long becoming that image, and now the price of freedom might be losing the trust of the one person she couldn't bear to lose. In that heavy silence, Nicole had to choose the one thing every woman in Fairmont Crest fears, choosing between saving face right now and saving the long truth for her daughter. If Nicole tried to do everything properly, she would stay quiet, withdraw, and allow the story to be told the way others wanted it told. If Nicole fought back, she might spill Honor's blood right there in Uptown, but she would reclaim ownership of her narrative. And while Nicole stood at that crossroads, Kial remained unnervingly calm, as if he were waiting to see whether she would destroy herself or save herself. That calm was the final spark. Nicole understood she couldn't count on anyone in this room to protect her, not even the man who had almost kissed her. She could only count on her own anger, and on Kat's capacity whether her daughter would step forward or turn away. Kat finally moved, a small motion but enough to shift the air. Nicole held her breath, not out of hope, but because she realized the future of a mother-daughter relationship can be decided by a single step. And in that instant Nicole grasped the cruelest part of this trap. Whether Kat stepped in or walked away, Nicole would still have to live with the outcome. If Kat saved her, Kat would be dragged into an adult war and wounded in ways Nicole never wanted. If Kat walked away, Nicole would know her daughter had chosen self-protection over protecting her mother, and that knowledge could harden into a cold distance that might never fully heal. Someone had calculated it so Nicole had no option that didn't hurt. And Nicole, for the first time since the divorce, felt as if she were back inside a windowless room, only this time the hand holding the key might not be Ted, might not be Carson, but Kial. That woman, or Fairmont Crest itself. From here, Nicole could no longer pretend that a night out was harmless fun. If she wanted freedom, she would have to fight for it, and that fight would dirty her hands, tear at her image, and maybe hurt Kat. The real question was no longer whether Nicole would kiss Kial, or whether that woman was jealous. The real question was whether Nicole had the courage to take responsibility for this new version of herself in front of her daughter, and whether she had the clarity to see who was pulling the strings in the dark. Because if Kial knew exactly how this would unfold and stayed silent anyway, then Nicole hadn't only been humiliated at Uptown. She had been warned that her new life had become a target. And Kat's eyes, whatever their disappointment truly meant, were the most ruthless mirror of all, forcing Nicole to face the truth that freedom isn't simply leaving a marriage, but daring to step through the traps built immediately afterward, when the entire community is only waiting for her to stumble once they can drag her back to the place they believe she belongs.